What's up? What's up?
What's up? What's up? Hey, James.
What's up, Holly?
Super excited to be here.
Man, I am super excited to have you here. For everybody that don't know Holly, y'all are in for a treat today.
Thank you.
We do these every Thursday where we interview an agent that's killing it in their area, in order to provide tremendous value to the real estate agent that's looking to grow and build their business. And today I have Holly Madden here, and Holly, I mean, it was just we was on the beach, right?
Yeah,
Few months ago, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, life, our EXP life has been great. Actually, the very first time I met you, James, was on a boat in Key West. And I think that's almost four years ago now.
Wow.
And when you think about the journey that we've been on and the market changes and all of the things in the last 4 years, I know I'm not the same person. I've completely grown, and I've learned so much from so many people across, our network who just opened up to help me, be a better agent, run a better business, and kind of get to the end, which is what our goal ultimately is like, get me to the end so I can get out.
Exactly. It's funny because like when I was in Vegas a couple of weeks ago, I was at Nick Krim's suite there, and we
Yeah.
were just talking about like all the people that was at Key West
Yes.
and the growth that took place from that mastermind.
Yes.
Everybody came back a different person. Everybody came back changed. And
Yes.
you're telling me, the same thing happened with you. And I mean, it's just amazing when you get like-minded people from different perspectives of really the country, together to mastermind and talk about their business and talk about, just what possibilities look like, what you're able to take from that and then implement it in your current market.
Yeah, it is so true. And I think this is a very unique dynamic that we experience that I know that I didn't experience previously. I'm next month is my 20th year in the industry, and the majority of my career was at a different brokerage, and we didn't have that level of networking. And you could go to conferences and stuff, and people weren't necessarily opening up their book to, this is what we do and this is how we make it different and this is how you can grow. So across my whole career, the trajectory that I've had in the last 4 years outweighs anything that I did before, because people are just opening up. Like when we were in Orlando in April, we were sitting at a table and just started doing this little mini mastermind. And that's just when we knew the rates were going to get ready to change. We didn't even know how far they were going to go up. And people were saying, oh, well, you could have your seller, give a credit to do a rate buy down. And we were sitting at the table like, what? We would have never even thought of that, in our little tiny beach town that I live in. That would not have been a concept that we thought of. And it's small things like that then can move your needle forward, because then you come home and you say, hey, and you share it with the people you work with. And then we have a whole new way to market.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you get people that are like doing things on a high level, and they think different, they operate different, and your mind start to expand about what possibilities look like. I mean, I remember the first time that I heard that I can get 3.5% and a 9.95 transaction fee on buyer side transactions. I mean, that like just totally just blew me away.
Yeah.
And I start implementing that, and I mean, I made an additional $100,000 on top of my regular commissions, just simply because understanding the process and actually being able to make it even to the point where the seller paid that amount.
Right.
So,
Right.
like, getting around the right people and being in the right rooms absolutely matter.
Yeah.
Um, being around you and talking to you, and that it was such a, you had a cabana at that particular time, and when we was at what was it, Cabo,
Bravo.
and just kind of hanging around and just talking, and you just dropping nuggets on me. I told my admin, I said, look, I gotta have Holly on because Holly has some good information she can share with the group.
Uh, so I get asked all the time, and to be honest, I never do them. And this, you're the only one that I said yes to. So when you reached out to me, I was like, really? James reached out to me? I'm like, yes, I will go on James's show.
Love it. Love it. I mean, I greatly appreciate it. All right. So everybody knows right now that the market has shifted.
Yeah,
And if you don't know, you're under a rock, right?
right,
You
right.
know, things are not like, it has been for the last 2 years. What are some of the things that you're doing for your team and for your group in order to combat that market shift?
So that's a great question. And what we did yesterday is we had a mastermind with two separate groups. So we took one group that was like the icon agents and the cappers and the people who are just really motoring along. And we talked to them about what is it that you feel is helping you be successful. And we want to give that as a gift to the second mastermind that's coming in as a couple of hours, that are the newer agents that are struggling and getting nervous, right? And so as we sat in the room, the one message that came through all the way across the board, maybe they said the sentence differently, was that they had consistency and they had a commitment to a schedule. And when we went into the second mastermind and we talked about, let's talk about your day. Do you have, who has consistency? Who doesn't? Everybody in the room raised their hand that they're inconsistent and that they're not sticking to any type of thing that they do on a regular basis. So we're putting some consistency in. We're working on upgrading skills because I think it's going to be a skills based market, and we're trying to help them understand better communication with clients.
Yeah. So I mean, everything you're saying is absolutely right. I heard somebody say one time, like, the average agent, their biggest thing, you ask them, like, how much money you want to make? They say $100,000. So they're like,
Yes, yes.
that's just the norm, $100,000. Everybody want to make $100,000. But yet, when they get their license and they get to working, this business, they do the business part time, right?
Right.
So like how do you help them to allocate the time? Because like if you're gonna, like, how many hours would it take for somebody working a 9 to 5 job, and it's really not 9 to 5, honestly, you end up working a lot more, to make $100,000 salary? And how do you help them to understand that they have to put that same amount of time into real estate in order to hit their goals?
So we started, reverse engineering it, right? So you can take a room of people and not everybody wants to make that, right? Some people have spouses and they have income coming in that way. Other people want to make less, they don't want to work as much. So we take where they want to be price wise, and then we take what the average commission in our area is, and then divide that by how many deals they have to do, and then how many appointments do they have to make to get to those deals, and then how many hours do they have to work to get to those appointments. And then, and I'll look at them and I'm like, it's just math, guys. Like, it's just math. So, and then once you know what that number is, like, either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. Jay Kinder had a great call with Wally Bressler the other day, talking about call reluctance and like overcoming fears of things and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people that come into the business also don't realize all of the things that they have to do in order to get that success, right? We don't want to call people, like, we're in an industry where we have to talk to people and we don't want to call people. And I'm guilty of it myself. I'll get all in my head, like, oh, they're going to be busy, I don't want to bother them, this may not be a good time. And it's like, you got to push through a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's funny because, like, when I first started, like, I got really, really good on the phones first. And then it kind of translated into other things. But we were just talking, like, right before we jumped on and went live, about like all the different hats that a real estate agent has to wear
Yeah.
right now. So what are some of the things that you're seeing that they have to do in order to be successful? That somebody, once you get a team, or you become a team leader, you can start outsourcing some of that stuff.
So I think for the solo agent right now, the between the lead generation, so like we'll use some of the terms, right? So they're the lead generator, then they're the ISA, so they're the caller of all of these people. Then we tell them, hey, you have to have a social media presence because that's your first interview with people. They're going to go to your social media, your personal page, your business page, all of this other stuff. Oh, hey, Instagram is overtaking Facebook. So make sure that your Instagram and that it's a nice grid, right? Oh, it has to be a pretty grid. And then you have to have a link tree and you have to have all of this. And then while you're doing that, hey, Google is really coming up strong and hard. So make sure your Google business page is together and that you're hyper local and you're geotagging and you're doing all of the stuff there. And oh, TikTok is out. You have to be funny. You have to make a video, and I mean, and then of course you have to educate yourself, right? You have to stay with what's happening. You have to know the inventory. You have to be able to have those meaningful conversations. And I'm like, when you're doing, after you do all of that, like you're exhausted. The client calls and you're like, oh, like, like it's the last thing you want to do is go show property because you've been TikToking all day.
That is crazy. So like for you, and I know for me, I mean, my biggest thing when I was growing my real estate business was I hated paperwork, right?
Yeah.
And at that particular time, I was nowhere near doing the social media that I'm doing now.
Yeah.
But I learned really quickly that I had to figure out how to get this off of my plate.
Yes.
I mean, I remember at the other brokerage that I was at before, I used to bribe they had an office manager. I just bribe them just to do my paperwork, lunch and everything,
Uh-huh.
flirting, whatever it took.
You sweet talk them.
Yeah, yeah, that was me all day long.
Yeah.
Just because I hated it. And the reality of it is that what somebody that specializes in that, they can get done with it in a snap. Where somebody like myself that hated it,
Right.
like I spent probably a good 30 minutes to an hour just regretting that I have to do it before I even start doing it.
Exactly.
So like once you started kind of growing and building your business, like what was some of the things that you started taking off of your plate first, and what did that look like?
So that actually was one of the first things that I took off my plate. I mean, I hired an admin who was all things, right? So she was the transaction coordinator, she was the follow up on phone calls and that type of thing. And it just is so freeing when you have somebody who's really good at something, they enjoy doing it, and they can do it in a record amount of time comparative to you, and you can just hand that off. And the nice thing about now is like now there are services that are already in existence for this, and you can pay transactionally versus making a commitment. Like our biggest thing that we're afraid of typically as our business is growing is we don't want to spend any additional money. Like a lot of times we've been in the weeds and we've been suffering and we haven't really been making money. We're behind on things. And then we start to catch fire, right? And it's like, yes, we got a check. Yes, the mortgage is going to get paid without an issue, right? And we can't imagine taking any of that money and allocating it to a staff member. It makes us too nervous. But transaction coordinator businesses are all over the place, and you just pay per transaction. And then additionally, nowadays you can add that transaction to your client once you get comfortable with that conversation, whether you put it on your listing agreement or whether you as a buyer's agent say it's a fee that's charged, and they're your coordinator, et cetera. And so it's not even coming out of your paycheck, it's just learning a skill to get it done.
Yeah. No, I love that because like every other business, that's what they do. They pass the cost on to the consumer. And agents are, we don't really do that. Like we just come up with a percentage and say this is the percentage, and everybody say, well, this is standard, and then just go forward from there. But when the gas prices go up, guess who pays? The
Right.
consumer. They pass it
Right.
along to us. When
Yes.
when the price of chicken goes up in a particular area, they pass it on to the consumer. And like if you're gonna run your business, like you have to be able to add those type costs in order for you to provide a better service for that environment. And I always do tell folks is like you have a choice within this business. You don't have to be the same. You can either be Walmart, which is nothing wrong with being Walmart, or you can be Nordstrom's, which is nothing wrong with being Nordstrom's, or you can be Target, which is nothing wrong with being Target. But each one of those have their own individual price structure for
Right.
their business model.
Right, exactly. Well, one of the things that we found was as the commissions were compressing and we were having difficulty getting the higher commission, and everybody's market's different on what that number is. But what we started to do was we would just go with the flow, so to speak, and say, yes, we can give you a discount. But at the discount, we have to add this fee in. So realistically, a lot of times we were already going in at that discounted number. We already knew that was the maximum we were going to get from that situation. But the client wanted to negotiate, felt like they were negotiating, and then very easily compromised to add that number in. So we were right where we wanted to be when we went in the door anyway,
Love it, love it. So one thing I heard from somebody what they did is they started doing like services, like they had like all this big laundry list of things that they would provide, and that's the fee for that one. And then for a little less of a fee, it'll be these services, and then a little less of a fee, it'll be that services. Is that kind of what you're saying? Similar to something like that?
Well, we still offer the full service, but in some markets you can get 6%. I mean, I know we're not supposed to talk commission and all that other stuff, but I don't want to get in trouble with NAR. But like in some markets you can get 6% very easily. And other times, when the things were flying off the shelf and people were like, no, we're only paying 5, or we only want to pay 4.5, or whatever it may be. We're still offering the full service because everybody else is offering the full service, and we want to get the business and we know it's going to sell. So we already knew going in, we were not walking out of that listing at 6%, but then we would just add into the conversation, okay, we can do this, but we have to add in this.
Yeah.
So
For,
so
for,
it helped defray those costs of the transaction coordinator. So we kind of make that cost, the transaction coordinator, the sign guy, the photography guy. So any of those ancillary costs that we pay is that transaction fee number. And so then when we get our commission, it's truly our paycheck, and all of the expenses were paid by that transaction fee.
one of the things I never understood, like with listing agents, is they do if you're going to split the commission evenly with the buyer's agent, and you're paying for pictures and you're paying for all this other stuff. I never understood why that was the case. It just
Yeah.
when you're doing it, it's like it's just better to be able to kind of translate that information on.
Yeah, I agree. So
Yeah.
some areas, like we have a big presence in Tennessee, and it is not common for their commission to be split 50-50 like that. That is not their structure in that state. So our state, it is common for it to be split equally. And when it's not split equally, people get very upset. So you have to find those creative ways to still, get your expenses paid. And like you said, it goes to the consumer.
Yeah. So, so Holly, just kind of going back a little bit on like some of the things that you've been able to accomplish. Like what things have you been able to do for, say, a brand new agent that's actually trying to get up and going? Like what's some of the things that you suggest for a brand new agent?
So, I think it's tough. Like, let's be honest, it's not. There's so much to learn, and I think that I always say, like you own your own business. You've just basically like opened a store, and a lot of times you don't have any experience in this store that you've just opened up, and you have to really get yourself educated and surrounded by people who can help you. And so what we do is we do training classes. We also recommend like open houses for them to meet buyers. We have a whole strategy around the open house so that the agent can continue to grow and learn. and we do role playing and practicing conversations and all of that. And then they have to get out there, like they can't be in their house and expect to have business. I'm either like, you're buying it through Zillow, realtor.com, whatever. You're either buying it or you're humping the street. Like one or the other is happening. It's just not knocking on your door unless it's your mom calling saying, we'll sell our house so you can make a check.
You somewhat you got to kind of like make it happen, because if you don't make those sacrifices, especially when you're talking about making those phone calls and things of that nature, somebody's going to sell the houses in the area. It's just a matter if it's going to be you or not, right?
Right, exactly. I think what it is like you have this fear of rejection, right? I mean, before you come to this business, in all likelihood, you have not cold called or, randomly talked to people and tried to tell them about what your service is and all of those. Those are conversations you've never had in your entire life. And now you come to this business and those are part of the things you have to do. So it's like you have to get surrounded by people who are doing it. And James, it's like so easy now. Like you can go on YouTube, you can, go into EXP World for the people that are with that brokerage and take training classes. There's so much information out there that you can be overwhelmed and overloaded with how to do things. It's just, you got to do it. You just have to do it.
Do you find it's better just to kind of focus in on one particular thing? Just like, I talk to a lot of agents and their whole thing might be something like lead generation. And, they want a lead generation. They want lead generation from everything. Like it's almost like the shiny thing syndrome. Like, do you find it easier or better just to find the thing, stick with it, be good at that and master that first before you go to something else?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Because what happens is it takes a while to master it. And so then you become unsure of yourself, right? You think this isn't working, this isn't working, this isn't working. And you get into a position where then you jump to the next thing. And now you're starting to learn that and it's not working, it's not working, it's not working. And you never gave anything enough time, never gave yourself enough time to really, saturate yourself in it. So they say like, you should be like a carrot, right? Like a carrot underneath the dirt. If you can picture it, it grows long and deep. So you should be long and deep in something before you go wide. So go deep before you go wide.
Love that. Love that. Well, Holly, man, I just, like once again, like I adore you so much as far as, everything that you've been able to share, not only here, but just kind of share period with the group. Um, anything that you think that like somebody that's looking to really grow their business, that they should be really kind of like homing their skills on, other than just the those making the phone calls?
I think communication skills are so important, whether they're written skills or verbal skills, like to be able to have the conversation with a seller that says you're not priced right, or this is what the market is, or so on and so forth. Sometimes we're intimidated and we're not used to those conversations and the client overruns us. And then we just end up in this situation where we're miserable, right? Because they're running us instead of us running them. So I think anytime you can, role play, practice conversations, practice objections, there's only so many of them out there that really will help you in the long run with growth.
One last question. Like, are you when you're doing your phone calls and between yourself or your inside sales agents? I mean, are they pretty much scripted, or is that how you teach them? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because what happens if it's scripted, so for a long time, I didn't want to be scripted, right? I wanted to be me. I wanted to say what I wanted to say. I'm more, this, that, and the other thing. But scripted is better because you're getting the answers, you're uncovering their motivation, you're leading them down the path, and then you get there. Otherwise, that's that old drawing between the conversation is like, it's all over the place and you don't end up anywhere.
Love it. Love it. Well, once again, we do these every Thursday at 11 o'clock, where we're actually having somebody that's killing in their industry in order to provide tremendous value to the real estate agent. Holly, man, we're super, super, super grateful that you was able to jump on and drop the nuggets that you did. If anybody wants to reach out to Holly and just just pick her brain and ask any questions, like how do they reach you, Holly?
They can reach me at I'll give you my phone number. It's 321-693-3099. You can text me or call. I would love to chat with anybody and help you grow in your business. And James, I'll see you in the cabana next year at Cabo. I've
That's
already got it reserved.
well, definitely that's how we're gonna do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And if anybody wants to know, but about anything real estate related, or if they want to know about what partnership looks like, you can actually join jameshmassey.com and book on my calendar for that as well. Um, Other than that, I mean, I appreciate you, Holly, once again. And like I said, the cabana is calling us.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Thank you so much, James, and take care. And I'm honored to be on your show. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Holly.
All right, bye.